Welcome to This Explainer. Listen, if you are an ambitious first-generation professional, I really need you to lean in and listen closely. You probably grew up hearing the exact same thing I did. If you just get an education, work hard, and follow the standard advice, you'll achieve financial freedom. Well, I'm going to show you why following that standard advice might actually be destroying your wealth. So, why is being poor so incredibly expensive? Right now, you might feel like you're stuck in a familiar comfort zone. You're working full time, you're religiously tracking your budget, you're doing absolutely everything right, but somehow you are still broke. You check your bank account and just wonder why upward financial mobility feels mathematically impossible. It's wildly frustrating, isn't it? Well, I want you to know it's not a flaw in your character. It's actually a feature of the system. The rules of money are fundamentally different depending on where you start. Today, we are going to expose exactly why being poor is incredibly expensive.
Okay, let's dive right into part one, the poverty premium.
We're talking about a concept economists call the poverty premium. This is the uncomfortable reality that lacking upfront cash literally forces you to pay a built-in premium just to survive in our economy. The best way to picture this is the Vimes boots theory. Imagine two different workers. A wealthy person can easily afford to drop $50 once on a high-quality pair of boots that will keep their feet perfectly dry for 10 whole years. But a poor person can only afford a cheap $10 pair of boots. Those cheap boots wear out super fast and they leak. So over that exact same 10-year period, the poor person is forced to buy 10 pairs of cheap boots. They end up spending $100, which is double what the wealthy person spent, and they still have wet feet. This isn't just about footwear, guys. It's a mechanical blueprint for how the working class is systematically kept from building wealth. Think about a totally normal trip to the grocery store. We all know buying in bulk at a place like Costco is mathematically cheaper per unit, right? But to pull that off, you have to cross a massive barrier. You need upfront cash to buy in bulk, a yearly membership fee, a reliable vehicle to actually transport the goods, and a home large enough to store all of it. If you don't have those resources, you are trapped paying higher daily prices. And this applies directly to your home, too. Low-income housing often has terrible insulation, leaky plumbing, and really old appliances. Because you can't afford a home with energy-efficient upgrades, you're forced to pay significantly higher monthly utility bills. You are quite literally paying a premium just for existing. And then we hit what I call the fatal mistake the system sets up for you, the scarlet letter of bad credit. When you're stretched thin just trying to survive these everyday traps, a single missed payment can completely tank your credit score. And what does poor credit actually mean for you? It is not just some random number on a screen. It's an aggressive financial tax. It leads to way higher financing costs just to get a reliable car to get to work. It means you have to put down mandatory cash deposits just to get a basic cell phone plan. It even results in higher car insurance premiums, even if you have a totally spotless driving record. Welcome to the banking trap. If you can't maintain a minimum balance, a lot of banks just slap you with a monthly maintenance fee. Yeah, you're literally being charged money because you don't have enough money. Crazy, right? But wait, it gets worse. Banks often use a practice called debit resequencing. This is where they intentionally rearrange the chronological order of your transactions. They process the absolute biggest ones first. Why would they do that? Because it drains your account faster, which allows them to trigger multiple $35 overdraft fees on a series of smaller purchases, like a morning coffee or a quick bus fare. So when traditional banks completely lock you out and drain your funds, what happens when a real emergency actually hits? You get forced into the alternative financial system, 400. That is the percentage of the annual percentage rate, or APR, you might be paying on a predatory payday loan. 400%. For so many common workers locked out of normal credit, this isn't a choice. It's literally the only option left to keep the lights on. It's this high-stakes realization that the system creates a brutal debt cycle that is almost impossible to escape through hard work alone.
And that brings us to the ultimate aha moment, where the math truly punishes progress. It's called the welfare trap. Let's say you finally get that raise you've been working so hard for. Step 1, you earn a slightly better salary. Amazing. But step 2, because most government aid is means-tested, that tiny raise pushes you over a rigid income threshold. You hit a benefit cliff. Step 3, you instantly lose vital housing, food, and healthcare subsidies. The value of what you just lost is way bigger than the value of that small raise you gained, resulting in a negative net benefit. You took a better job and mathematically, you just became poorer. For any rational worker, the system is literally disincentivizing upward mobility. Now, what's really interesting here as we move to part 2, measuring the inequality gap, is how this looks on a massive national level.
We've seen the brutal reality of personal finance on the ground, but how do economists actually measure the impact of these systemic traps across a whole country? They use something called the Gini index. It's a clean, purely mathematical way to measure the systemic imbalance. On the Gini scale, 0 represents perfect equality, where everyone has the exact same income. A 1 indicates perfect inequality, meaning one single person owns absolutely everything in the society, and everyone else has 0. It gives us a rough measure of who gets how much in any given country.
Let's look at some global benchmarks to see this in action. Developed nations typically hover around 0.3, with countries like the Netherlands and Denmark successfully keeping their indices below 0.28 since the 1980s. But then look at China. To grow their economy incredibly fast, they shifted toward capitalism in the late 70s. While average yearly incomes definitely shot up, their Gini index also skyrocketed from under 0.4 to over 0.55. What does this tell us? It proves that economic inequality isn't just some random accident of nature. It's very often the direct result of the specific choices that governments make regarding their economies. When these feedback loops of wealth are left totally unchecked, the results are just staggering. Take South Africa, which is one of the most unequal countries in the world right now. There, the richest 1/10 of 1% owns almost 30% of all the country's wealth. That's more than double what the entire bottom 90% owns. It is a wild visualization of extreme, unchecked inequality. But you don't even have to look overseas to find massive wealth gaps. Just let this number sink in for a second. 3. Just 3 Americans collectively hold $90 billion more than the entire nation of Egypt. Think about that. A whole country of 100 million people. This is the sheer colossal cost of the wealth loop working exactly as it was designed to. Which brings us to part 3, fixing the system and escaping the wealth loop. We're entering the final phase of our journey now. We've seen the traps, we understand the macro scale of the problem. So how do societies actually try to fix this rigged game? Governments generally rely on 4 main methods to reduce inequality. You have progressive taxation, where tax rates go up as your income goes up, government transfers, universal services, and finally, universal basic income. Let's break down how these mechanisms actually work to try and level the playing fields. Let's compare 2 of these strategies head to head. Income transfers involve the government literally taking tax revenue from one group and giving it to another, like Social Security. In Italy, about 25% of a household's disposable income comes from transfers, compared to just over 5% in the US. On the other side, we have universal services. This is about providing totally equal access to foundational things like education and healthcare for all citizens. The whole idea here is that a healthy, highly educated workforce can command higher salaries, which naturally reduces inequality right from the ground up. Now, let's look at that final tool and see how this builds a potential solution for the common worker, universal basic income, or UBI. Remember that brutal benefit cliff we talked about earlier, where taking a better job actually punishes you? UBI theoretically solves that exact trap. By providing a fixed, guaranteed benefit to every single citizen no matter their wealth, your wages actually supplement your benefit instead of replacing it. It completely wipes out the welfare trap because you never ever lose your safety net just for earning a higher salary. So, here is the absolute crucial realization we have to walk away with. Power and wealth are naturally self-reinforcing. Understanding this requires a huge fundamental shift in mindset. Equality just isn't the natural state of an unmanaged economy. If you start with capital, the system is explicitly built to multiply it. If you start without it, the system is built to extract the little you do have through all those premiums and traps we covered. I want you to really let the gravity of this idea sink in. Left to their own devices, societies tend toward inequality, unless we intentionally weaken the feedback loops of wealth and power concentration. Listen, individual effort, strict budgeting, working incredibly hard, all of that is so important. But on their own, they absolutely cannot beat a system that inherently concentrates wealth at the very top. We have to truly understand the actual mechanics of the game if we're ever going to change it. Well, you're no longer in the dark. You are no longer just a passive participant blaming yourself for not getting ahead fast enough. You understand the poverty premium, the banking traps, those nasty benefit cliffs, and the massive macro forces at play. So I want to leave you with one final provocative question. Now that you see the system for exactly what it is, how are you going to navigate your financial future? Keep learning, keep pushing forward, and please, do not let the system build a ceiling over your ambition. Thanks so much for watching this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.